The other thing I want to do is connect these scenes to the current situation in the world around us, specifically the teacher's work stoppage and the student walkout this week, because for me, either these passages are relevant or they're not. So let's go for yes as a possible answer. So the first scene, I need two helpers. I need someone to be Melchizedek, and I need someone to be Abram. So who wants to? This just really quick. There's no lines. Okay, I just need someone to be. So Ace, you want to come and be? Do you want to be Melchizedek or do you want to be Abram?
Abram.
You want to be Abram. Who wants to be Melchizedek? I need a Melchizedek.
Ella does.
You don't even have to. Ella?
No.
I think you have to help Abram on this one.
She did Abram or I did?
You're Abram. Yeah.
Okay, she can't be Melchizedek.
No, I'm. Okay, Sue. Good. Thank you. Okay, so here's the story we just read was the story of Melchizedek blessing Abram. So we need to understand the system a little bit better. Okay, so Melchizedek is the king of what? Salem. Now, besides witches, what does Salem remind you of?
Peace.
How about Jerusalem? Because Jeru means city of. Okay, so city of peace, shalom, all this sort of stuff. Anyway, right? So Melchizedek here is king. Okay? And because he, or in this case she, is king, she needs to be a bit higher than the rest of us. So why don't you come and stand on this deck, right? So you're a bit above Abram here. But the king of Salem, Melchizedek, is not just the king. King Melchizedek is also the priest. So here's your priestly vestment. Right? It's made up of ties, so you know it's all very official and everything.
Just mended too.
There you go. So you can move up another step for being priest. Okay? But you're not just king and you're not just priest, you're actually both at the same time. So we're going to elevate you one more step for being both at the same time. Okay? So there's Melchizedek, right? King of Salem, priest of God Most High. And here's Abram down here at the bottom of the step. Right? And so Melchizedek blesses Abram. Right? And Abram responds by doing what? What did the story say? Give him 10% of everything he had. Wow. There you go.
That's 10%. You can stop.
Okay, so the idea is that Melchizedek, being up here as king and priest, he is king and priest because he is. Right? It's ontology. It's just like this is the way that God wanted things to be, and therefore God has made you king and priest, which means that, right, because he is up there, he's got better access to God, so this is why, right, blessing goes this way, downward, to poor old Abram down here. Okay? But the reality of things is that Melchizedek is actually king and priest because the people are willing to go along with this charade, and because the soldiers reinforce it. Right? So you can bow before your king if you want to, you know, but if you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. The soldiers will just cut your head off. It's a, it's a free choice you have. Right? So this is the actual system, right? But the idea, right, is that somehow, for whatever reason, right, well, for the reason of the soldiers mostly, right, we have a king who is above us, right, and who brings blessing down. Now, Abram here, for his part, he's not just Joe Abram, right? He's not just ordinary dude. He's actually a patriarch in his own right, right? He's got wives and children and servants and slaves and cattle and sheep and goats and all this, you know, all these people who work for him. And he just sort of sits around all day and watches everybody else run around and work for him. So this whole system, right, doesn't just benefit Melchizedek, it benefits Abram. He's getting something out of this exchange. right? He's reinforcing this whole system, which, so you're not really at the bottom. You're at least one step up here above the, the ordinary masses down below. Okay? Thank you very much. You may step down. I need the best. Okay, you probably don't want to jack it out.
Oh, I do. Okay, yeah.
Now, Jeremiah's got another idea. Or at least God gave Jeremiah another idea. Jeremiah says, this whole system, going up to God this way, right? We go up through the patriarch who goes to the king who goes up to God. There's got to be a better system than this, Jeremiah says. And so Jeremiah says, someday we're going to have a new system, a new covenant. That's really what the covenant thing is. It's the sort of the system for how we do things, how we relate to God. And someday it's going to be inside all of us. It's going to be inside the king, but it's also going to be inside the people. And so we really don't need the middleman to get to God. We don't really need, somebody to tell us the laws because they're inside of us. We don't need the soldiers to enforce the laws because they're inside of us. And so this whole system, in some ways, becomes unnecessary, or at least it transforms in the way it thinks about things. I think both the teachers in the walkout, in the work stoppage, and the students in the walkout had a similar sort of thing in mind. Because what they really want, or at least one of the things they wanted, is they wanted their leaders to have the same heart that they do. Like the teacher said, what would really be nice in the legislature is if the legislature really cared as much about the students as we do. And what the students were saying is, the people who make the laws, if they really cared about our safety as much as we care about our safety, maybe they would do something. And the government, of course, responded and said, no, we're not actually caring about those things as much as you are. We're much more interested in making sure the rich keep all of their money and the NRA is happy, or whatever. I still don't understand what motivates them sometimes, right? But it clearly wasn't, right? So this new heart, right, that Jeremiah is talking about is in some ways exactly what the teachers and the students were both looking for, and unfortunately exactly what they didn't receive. So that's our first seed. So this reading was from the book of Hebrews. And the basic theme of the book of Hebrews is that whatever else you think is great, Jesus is even better. Right? So, the three major themes of the book of Hebrews are Jesus, Jesus, and Jesus. Okay, so, and this particular passage is about Jesus as our high priest. Right, we're going to need someone to be Jesus. Anyone here ever wanted to be Jesus? Katie, you ever wanted to be Jesus?
Yes.
Absolutely, right? As a follower, that was the goal all along, right? So I don't know how you put this thing on, but however it works best. There you go. Okay, so this is Jesus, our great high priest. Thank you. Now the problem is that Jesus wasn't the least bit qualified. I mean, he was first of all never the earthly high priest, and second of all, he wasn't the least bit qualified to be high priest, because in order to be the high priest, you first of all have to be a priest. In order to be a priest, your dad has to have been a priest. And Jesus' dad wasn't from the right line to be a priest. Right? This is always very confusing for Catholics because, in Judaism, in order to be a priest, your dad has to have been a priest. And in Catholicism, if your dad is a priest, this is not a good thing. Right? So anyway, right? Different system. Right? So if you think Catholic, don't think Catholic anymore. Right? So this is our system. So, but this passage proclaims Jesus as our great high priest through the order of Melchizedek, who we just met before, right? So you get to go right straight to the top of the stairs, right? Jesus, our great high priest. And he was high priest, according to this passage, because he was appointed by God, right? So just like Melchizedek, straight to the top of the ladder, right? Straight to the top of the stairs, Jesus, our great high priest. But how did he get there? Well, he got there because of his appointment. It starts out to say, but Right? In verse 7, it says, he learned, he was heard because of his reverent submission. So you don't actually get to be the top step, because you're submitting, and you can't really be on the top step being submitting, right? And although, in verse 8, he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. Yeah, you better come down another step, right? And having been made perfect. Right? This is all a process, right? So, yeah, you stay up there. Yeah, right? So Jesus as high priest, right, is not the old system of you go straight to the top of the ladder and you stay there and everything is fine. But you earn your way up those steps, not by being better than everybody or bigger than everybody or stronger or anything like that, but in fact through suffering and through obedience and your willingness to submit. Right? So it's this weird thing where you get to be at the top of the ladder by climbing down the ladder. Right? And in fact into a hole. Right? Because Jesus ultimately gets to be the king by dying on a cross. Right? This weird thing that's going on. Thank you. That's all I need. Relating this, right, to what's going on in our world, one of the things I noticed this last week or two is how quickly the voices of the students and the teachers got taken over by other people. Right? So the teachers wanted to say something, the students wanted to say something, and suddenly, the politicians, they grab the microphone and they're going to start speaking for the teachers. They're going to start speaking for the students. Right? Or the press shows up and they interview like 2 teachers and suddenly they know all there is to know and the press starts to talk and you get a bunch of talking heads around in a circle. They're going to talk for the teachers now because they know. Right? And then, right, and so you resolve the problem. The governor, he says, I'm going to appoint a council to talk about this sort of stuff and the healthcare issue, right? So the governor is going to appoint a council, and the council gets appointed, and guess how many teachers are on the council? Right? And guess how many women there are on the council initially? Right? 1. Right? And now there were 2. Pardon me. There were 2. Right? And then he adds some more. Right? But right, and one of the questions that one of the things that the teacher said is, hey, maybe we deserve a few more seats at this table, right? And or like when the students start talking about shootings, immediately the press comes up and goes, or people came out and said, you guys really got to shut up and go back to school and let the adults talk about this, right? Because you don't really deserve a seat at the table. And Hebrews comes along and says, no, this is all backwards. Like, the question is not, do the teachers and the students deserve a seat at the table, right? But why do the politicians think they deserve a seat at the table? Because what gets you a seat at the table, according to Hebrews, is the fact that you've done the work, and you've done the suffering, and you've done the obedience, and you've stood in a classroom with a bunch of unruly children and tried to beat some knowledge, gently place some knowledge into their heads. Right? And you've done the shooter drills, and you've gone to school day after day, not sure when one of your classmates is going to pull a gun and start, shooting at everybody they can see. Right? And when you've done that, when you've experienced that, that's what gets you a seat at this table, right? A seat at Jesus' table, because right, you, like he, have done the work, and you deserved to be there. This is sort of how the new kingdom works. Scene 3. Scene 3 is actually a scene from after Palm Sunday, so we're a bit confused here in terms of our time, but it's the way it goes sometimes. And it's John's version, and because it's John's version, it's complicated. So this is going to take a little bit more explaining, and I'm going to need some help here. I'm going to need representatives from 3 groups. I'm going to need a Greek, and a Hebrew, and a Philip. A Philip.
That's a group.
No, actually it's not. It's but anyway, he can be a disciple, okay? So I just need 3 people to come up. 1, 2, 3. Good, thank you. Just assumed Axel was going to pop up, so I was just confused here. Okay, so who wants to be the Greek? Okay, so this is a story about 3 groups, even though there's really only 2. You're too late. Right? Right? So the Greeks come and they say to Philip, we want to see Jesus. So you get to be the Greek. Right? That says Hellenos, which is the Greek word for Greek, actually. Okay? And as the Greek, you are one of the leaders. I mean, you are part of the leading. There you go. You're part of the leading group. Right? This is the Greco-Roman Empire that you're part of. Right? So you can go right straight to the top of the stairs. You're one of the Greeks. You want to see Jesus. But you're one of the Greeks in Jerusalem. Right? And Jerusalem, while it's part of the Greco-Roman Empire, is still the heart and soul of Judaism. So while you're part of the Roman Empire, you're in somebody else's city, so you best go down a step, okay? Now, the next group isn't really talked about, but it's sort of implicit in the story, and that's the Jews, right? The people of Jerusalem, right? So you want to be the Jews, right? So this is the Hebrew word, Ivri, meaning Hebrew, okay? And you are in your holy city. This is Jerusalem, the holy city of God. So you can go straight to the top of the stairs. Because you are the chosen, one of the chosen people of God in the holy city of God, except that you're part of the Greco-Roman Empire, which you would have honestly thought of as Satan's empire, but the Greeks, of course, would have disagreed on it. So anyway, you best come down a step, because, you know, so it's not quite. Now then there's Philip. Philip, it's very clear, is from where? You just heard this. No? Bethsaida in... This is why you actually like open your Bible and you love when someone's reading Scripture. It's from Bethsaida in Galilee, it says. Okay, so being from Bethsaida in Galilee in those days is sort of like if you were having the same discussion in Morgantown today, and someone said, "Oh yeah, I'm from the town of Twilight in Boone County." Exactly what would happen, right? So Philip, he gets a blank sheet, because let's face it, he can't read anyway. Right, he may have graduated from high school, but that doesn't mean he can read. Right? That's what he's going to go to college for, to learn how to read. Right? So this is the situation. But in this particular case, the Greek person goes to Philip and says what?
I want to see Jesus.
Wants to see Jesus. Right? Now, Philip could have said what? Could have said, sure. He's over there. Go talk to him. But Philip suddenly gets a little bit of power here, because the Greek person's coming to him. You get to go up a step at least here. Right? And so he's going to recreate this hierarchy. So he's going to go find his brother Andrew, and they're going to go to Jesus to ask him, right? Because they get to be the middlemen in this situation, which is a form of power. Okay? So this is what's going on in the story. Do I need you guys anymore? No, I think we've established sort of the basic story. If you want to keep this, you can keep these if you want. You're okay. You want. You can take all three. There. So that's what's going on in the story. And then Jesus replies. And one of the curious things is, how is Jesus' reply an answer to the question at all? Because, right, the question is, Jesus, can these Greeks come and see you? And Jesus says, what? for the Son of Man to be glorified, blah, 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 blah. Never says yes or no at all. So I was curious, like, how is this an answer to the question? And I think it's an answer to the question because Jesus turns this sort of specific question into a general question. The specific question is, can the Greeks come and see Jesus? And Philip, of course, is trying to then recreate the hierarchy of the old system. And Jesus turns it into a general inquiry, like, so how do you figure out how to go see Jesus? How do you go figure out how to go talk to God in this sense? Right? And Jesus says, it's not about seeing me, it's about serving and following me. That's what this is really all about. Right? It's not a matter of access to God. It's a matter of living a life of service and of following. And this is your access to God. And who is welcome in this? Everybody. Because it's not a matter of who you are, whether you're a Greek or a Hebrew or, some guy from Twilight in Moon County. Right? Everyone has exactly the same opportunity to serve and to follow. And then Jesus says, in the end, all of the powers will be driven out. Right? Verse 31, now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And when I am lifted up, I will draw all people to myself. Right? So all of these differences, up and down the steps, just completely irrelevant. It's about serving and following, and Jesus who draws all people to himself. So from the perspective of the teachers and the students, I think the response here is to make sure that we don't give the politicians any more respect than they deserve. And maybe they do deserve some, and maybe they don't. But that's a decision that we get to make. Right? That they don't get to sort of stand up on top of the steps and say, well, because I'm on the top of the steps, I deserve a certain amount of respect. No, the answer is you get up here, right? And so it's not because of the fancy clothes, right? It's because how well do you serve? How well do you follow? And that is, right? Because in a lot of ways, leadership is going to continue. It's not like, right, anarchy, I just don't see anarchy working very well. I don't know. But, so I think leadership is going to continue, but how, not just how we lead, but how we honor and listen to those who claim to be our leaders is very important. And certainly, whatever you do, don't do what Philip just did, trying to recreate the hierarchy among ourselves. That's not how we do things. And maybe also rethink your idea of what it means for someone to be your representative. Because someone who's your representative is supposed to represent you and not represent themselves because they got your vote. We are heading this week toward Palm Sunday. Next week is Palm Sunday. And we're going to march around here and wave our little palm branches, or not, depending if we get crown palm branches, right? But we're going to talk about Ride on King Jesus and things like that. Right? But as we do this, we need to constantly remind ourselves of how different this concept of kingship is. Right? This is Jesus always, always, always heading toward the cross. Right? And even afterwards, the nail holes are still there, the scars are still there. So it's not so much about kingship as it is about a new type of kingship and a new type of leadership. Amen. Let's respond to